Welcome to Season 2 of Let This Mind podcast. Come along on the journey with us as 3 therapists discuss mental health topics from a biblical perspective. We're talking about themes like boundaries, grief, trauma, and how to let our minds be healed and whole. Because mental health isn't new. It's just finally being heard. Direct hit.
Hey everybody, direct hit, okay?
Direct hit, always get me.
Always a direct hit. We want you to know that, okay? Whenever we want to talk about is a direct hit. Right. But you are tuned in for another episode of Let This Mind podcast. Look, we're letting our mind be healed, letting our mind be whole. And we're talking about the things that nobody really wants to talk about, but we desperately need to talk about. My name is Steph Jones, aka Lilac Calandra, and I am joined by 2 other amazing co-hosts, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump into the topic that needs to be spoken about.
Okay. Dominique here. Again, your lovely therapist on every corner, street, church, or wherever you want me to be, I'm going to be. So I am happy to be here once again.
Hey y'all, Jermaine here. I'm the only non-Jones in here. Hey y'all.
But we still love you. We still love you. You're not you included.
I am a licensed mental health counselor, the youth whisperer, the bridge, the compass. That's me.
Yes, youth whisperer.
What?
Love it.
The youth need to hear a whisper because they hear
for real, because it's a lot of loud.
Come on. So love it. You know what I mean? We all bring our own expertise, our own perspectives with one common goal of letting people know that healing is a reality on this side. We don't have to wait until we get to heaven. We don't have to wait until we, get to the pearly gates. No, healing and wholeness is available on earth right now, like presently. You know what I mean? So that's all we're trying to promote. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about boundaries. Okay? Drum roll, please.
The B word. That's not the other B word.
Not the B word. The B word that we need to use. We use that other B word.
Right. The other B word they can take out.
We need boundaries. And we're going to really talk about why we need them, why we don't have them, the ways to get them if we need to build them up, the ways to reduce them if they're too firm, too strong. We're just going to talk about it all. What we see happening in society, in the world now, is from a lack of boundaries on every single side. We're talking about in our homes, in our relationships, in our churches, in our schools, just everywhere, amongst friends, sisters, families, lack of boundaries or too many boundaries, or just like not knowing how to balance it. Right. This is what's causing a lot of the issues. So we're going to discuss that. I know, ladies, when we were talking and just kind of checking in about how we wanted to move through this episode, we were just saying that there are some general things that need to occur with boundaries. Like, okay, boundaries are going to look different, right? Dominique, you mentioned in a marriage, boundary looks different at a church, in a school, on your job. But there are some commonalities that all boundaries share, right? And that's what we want to really identify and showcase, because if you're someone who needs to work on your boundaries, maybe you're someone who doesn't have any boundaries. And I mean, you're a doormat. You let everybody walk over you. You let everybody do whatever. And then you're mad and upset because you're hoping that you can find the courage. We're here to encourage you to get boundaries. Boundaries, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to pass the mic on. Boundaries are not to keep things out, is to protect what's inside here, right? Imagine a castle, right? Like the castles of old. They had a moat. They had the alligator in the moat. They had the armed guard. They had the knights. It was to protect what's inside the boundary. So if we shift our perspective on boundaries, then I think sometimes it'll be easy to like get them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So speaking of those commonalities that we need with boundaries, what are some commonalities that we need, that all boundaries have? Like a common theme that all boundaries have.
Yeah, well, I think number one, just the definition of it, right? Just alone, really understanding, because I think a lot of the times, the issue with putting up a boundary at times, because we're talking about both parts of this and total ends of the spectrum. So some of the time I see that, especially in church, especially at work, certain specific places, there is a lack of boundary because there's not a full definition. So like in church, right? When we go to church, you feel like if you put up that boundary, you're not of God, you don't have love, you lack love and you need more of the spirit. And I don't necessarily think, I think you need to make that real clear.
I'm getting a little
So I had to really look this up. I had to look up the word. And I'm using just a regular, Oxford dictionary, right? Yeah. But I think it's really important. It says a line that marks the limits of an area, right? And then you have like a dividing line. But I want a line that marks the limits, the limits of an area, right? So I think it's very important to notate here and put a pin in that a boundary is a standard that you set for yourself that says, hey, this is getting a little bit too far for me, or hey, I'm not comfortable moving to this position yet. Maybe we need to adjust and give me some time to get comfortable with it, or maybe it's just not something I'm comfortable with at all, and we need to just erase it from the conversation or whatever it may be. So I think that's the first thing I wanted to make like clear. It's not, you don't lack love because you decide that you're not going to have this conversation with someone today. Like I've had, for examples, like different pastors, right? Love pastors. This is not to bash the church, but sometimes I say I'll use just people in power at all, or any type of power or leadership role. They may try to pry a little bit sometimes in life, and sometimes it's okay to say, "Hey, I don't want to talk about that." Like, I don't want to talk about that, or maybe I should talk to my partner, my husband, my wife, whatever, before we do talk about stuff like this. So just little things like that, like certain things. So just understanding that it is okay to put up a boundary, and it doesn't mean that you lack the fruit of the spirit. It doesn't mean that your baptism doesn't matter. It doesn't mean we're going to cancel your membership, like
excommunicated, like you kicked out. But people need to know that. People need to hear that and get that in their spirit.
Absolutely.
That a boundaries should be, if boundaries shouldn't be anyplace else, it should be in the church. Because at times we throw ourselves fully into the church, and we're encouraged to do that. Come on, we all into the church. We're encouraged to drop our boundaries because it's the way of the Lord. And that's how Christ would do it. Don't manipulate me. All pastors, leaders, bishops, apostles, high prelates of the 16th order, everyone should be encouraging their congregants to have boundaries because it's necessary and it's needed. So I love that. People, I hope you're letting Dominique's words penetrate. Like, we need to hear that for real.
Yeah. I would say, I heard someone say once, boundaries are where you end and someone begins. And I feel like to understand what that means is to say boundaries are really, like Steph said, to protect what's within. I think we miss it, and we think that putting up a wall is the same thing as putting up a boundary. Those are two very different things, right? And I love what Steph said. She didn't say it yet, but she said it in our check-in. That boundaries are really about self-love. Like, if I love myself, if I honor myself enough, I can't let everyone have access to it, right? There's certain standards that you have to have for yourself that say, if it threatens my peace, if it threatens my sanity, if it threatens my soul, if it threatens my walk with God, if it threatens my job, it can't have all of this access to me, which means, like, they have this thing called personal space. That's a boundary. Like, if you're my mom, like, sure, you can be in my face, but sir, if I just met you, back up. Thank you. Because I don't know you and you're a little too close. So it's like knowing where you end and where someone begins, and understanding that you're putting it up out of self-love.
Yeah. And being okay with it too. And being okay with that, that someone had to do that or has to do that, even if you don't understand it, even if you feel like you're not the one, right, that has it, like, oh, well, I don't need that, but okay, well, I'm not you, so if you don't need that boundary, that's fine, but I do. And having people be okay with that, I think that's the issue too.
It is. It really is. And the thing about it is, like, when we're talking about the self-love that has to come into the mixture of boundaries, it's like you can tell who loves you by who honors your boundaries. And if I'm stepping on toes and sweeping at people's doors, then so be it, right? I got to have the boots on, the Tim boots on, and the broom, because hello, New York, you got the Tims,
we got the wheat, we got the beef and broth, whatever you want, we got them.
And you standing on business, you can tell how someone loves you, appreciates you, respects you as you, by how they honor your boundaries. The other person doesn't have to understand your boundary. They don't have to get the etymology, the origin, the genesis. It's a boundary. If I respect and love you, I'm talking to you like, okay, Dominique, you have a boundary. Jermaine, you have a boundary. I respect and honor you. I'm going to honor that boundary because I honor you. So it is a telltale sign of who loves you for real, in any relationship that you're in, be it platonic, be it relation-wise, business, church, wherever. People who don't honor your boundaries, it says a lot how they see it. It just says how they see you. It's just a reality. And when you have that self-love and that self-worth, and you're like, I need to protect the treasure in here, that I don't need to have everything wide open, then you'll understand, like, okay, I need these boundaries, and this is the way I need to navigate. I was looking up a scripture while you both were talking, right? It's Proverbs 4:23, and I read it in the Passion Translation because it just opens it up a little bit more. So above all, guard the affections of your heart, for they affect all that you are. Pay attention to the welfare of your innermost being. If that's not a boundary, I don't know what is. It's all in the word. Guard your heart. How do you guard your heart? You put a boundary that we're not to let everybody in, everything in, and it's just like, oh, okay, it's all willy-nilly. And based on how we were raised, and based on the churches we were in, and based on how we see ourselves, some of our boundaries are non-existent, right? Everything is just wide open. And it says a lot about how we view ourselves. If you love yourself, if you cherish yourself, I don't mean in a narcissistic, sorry to say that word. I don't mean that way. I mean in the real way. Like I see myself as a treasure. I know my worth.
Yes.
I have to have boundaries because I have to protect my energy, my peace, my space. And if I see myself low and below, I won't have boundaries, and I'll just let everybody come in. So boundaries reveal so much about ourselves, and then it shows how other people see about us too.
Sure. You know, I think when you're raised in toxic homes, boundaries don't exist, right?
Hey!
And if they do, they're definitely enmeshed, which means they're kind of like conjoining into one confusing mess, right? And so the other day I was driving home and I was like, you know, I'm recovering, y'all. I'm recovering. But I used to hate when people put boundaries on me. I said, well, wait a minute. I'm so loving and caring. And what do you mean there's boundaries? Don't do that. Because I'm not going to, you know, violate something. But I learned and I am appreciating that boundaries are necessary because it causes confusion. And like boundaries, we need clarity, we need understanding. Like, this isn't to say I hate you. This isn't to say that I don't want you in my life. It's just like sometimes I need a break. Sometimes your energy might be too big, or your words might not be welcomed, or whatever it is. Like, we all have a necessity, and what that necessity looks like, it differs depending on the person. But we ought to honor that in other people the same way we expected people to honor it within self. And I didn't realize that I expected people to respect the mess out of my boundaries. But then I was like, wait, but where you going? Like, what do you mean? Like, what? And it's because like some homes, they don't teach what effective boundary setting looks like, and what effective emotional regulation looks like, and how not to take everything personal, because I definitely was one who took everything personal. But you have to learn that when boundaries are put up, don't take it personal, because it's not just against you. Sometimes it's just people need time and space.
True. Yeah, I was thinking, I was going back to that to the self-love topic, because I keep thinking about like why is it so hard, not only hard to put up the boundaries, but because sometimes we do, like sometimes we have in our mind like what the boundary will be, but executing it is sometimes the issue. And I'm thinking about it, and again, y'all know me, I love the word, we all love the word. So I always think about the fruit of the spirit, and I think about that self-discipline or that self-control that we have to have within ourselves. And I think about that because when we talk about self-love and we talk about how we truly value ourselves and how we honor our own boundaries, that's important, because I think that is how you start. Because how I think a lot of times we put up boundaries after the fact. Again, I'm very much preventative. So we put up boundaries after the fact, like this has happened, I've learned from this, which is okay. And now we're putting it up within a friendship. And now you have to kind of recondition a friendship, versus when you come in with a certain set standard or way that you're like, hey, look, in friendship, this is, I know what I'm going to deal with. I know what I'm not going to deal with. I know what I will tolerate in a relationship. I know what I don't. I know what I want in the church. I know what I don't want in church. Like when you come in with those things and you come in with that standard, I think that's when you start to honor that. And then people can see that and say, okay, I have to honor this too. Because the moment that you do not honor the boundaries that you are setting and you don't execute those efficiently, then everything else kind of goes out the window. Why should they? Right? Like, what's the point? And now they're kind of tiptoeing on the line of, is this really a boundary at this point? Because I could, you're not really, you told me that, so I think that self-discipline and that self-control is so important in the aspect of self-love, because I can love myself all day long, right? I can love myself all day long and value myself all day long. But if I'm not executing and showing people the example of, it's one thing to say it in word, I love myself and I got all the selfies up on Instagram and I think I'm cute and all those things. But when you don't respect yourself in the sense of, hey, this is my standard, and you can't cross this line with me because this is my standard, you don't have it. So it's important that we honor the boundaries that we're setting and we're putting in place, because if we don't, people won't. And people don't have to. You have to make it your business to say, hey, no, right here, yeah, this is where this line, you see this? Yeah, this is where it's at. And be okay with that. And if they're not okay, you have to also be okay with the fact that people have the right to react to your boundary the same way you would. And that may in turn have people to, leave. That may be in turn, you may be losing a job because you have set a boundary. And I'm not going to do an unethical practice,
right?
An unethical thing.
Sounds personal. Sounds like we at your front door, mama. We at your front door.
I'm not going to do something unethical and against the word of God because you feel like it's okay to do it. Absolutely not. You can fire me today. You can let me go. So just little things like that. Like, you have to honor those standards and never let them down. Honor them, because then resentment comes in.
Come on. So, that's the turn of the tide, right?
Right.
Where we have to train people how to treat us. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm hearing you saying. Like, we have to be the model, that how I treat myself, how Stephanie treats Stephanie is how I expect people to treat me. And should you not treat me the way I treat myself, based on how I love myself, based on how I view myself. When I can look at myself in the mirror, I can sleep okay at night. I know that I'm the apple of God's eye. Like, all that, fearfully and wonderfully made, I know all that in here. Mm-hmm. If I don't know that, then I am going to let people treat me however they want to. And something you guys were saying too, it just starts stirring up all these thoughts. I'm like, I think I was mentioning this too, like when we were discussing, what we want to talk about. Boundaries are an act of love. Yes. Boundaries are an act of love. And so it's a perspective shift, that we are so offended by people's boundaries. And Jamae, you were just saying that. And that's real life, that you can have your boundaries in place. And then you're like, you put up a boundary against me. How dare me?
What do you mean I don't have all access to you?
Preposterous. How dare you? But it's like, boundaries are an act of love. I'm saying to you, I love you so much. I respect you so much. I actually still want you in my life so much that I am going to put this contract, I'm going to put you on a PIP. I'm going to put you on a performance improvement plan that if you can get this together, that we can still stay in contact. Should you not be able to, you will be terminated. And I love you with the love of the Lord, but you won't be in my life. So a boundary is an act of love. We have to look at it like that. Yes. When I'm looking at boundaries, I'm like, I love you so much. What you're doing, what you mentioned earlier, Jamae, too much energy, too much stuff going on. You're trying to control my life. I'm putting up the boundary because I'm saying, hey, I still want you here. The choice is up to you, though. And we don't get the choice to say, you shouldn't be mad at my boundaries. Dominique, you said that. People can feel any way they want about our boundaries, but our boundaries still remain. And if someone notices that your boundary is like a sheet of paper and not a concrete wall, and they go to push that thing and it falls down, like, the hordes, the stampede is coming, and they're coming and they're going to trample over your boundaries. So if we put up we don't want the fake concrete wall, like the movie producers, right. You want that real concrete. You bump into this wall, you're going to feel the sting, and it's going to remind you, oh, you know what, they have a boundary up, and let me honor it, because I don't want to keep bumping into this thing, and I still want to be in their life. So I'm going back to what I started with. We train people how to treat us, how we honor ourselves, how we take our own self-care, how we make ourselves, in a relaxed state. We honor and protect our peace. People see us doing that with ourselves. They can follow the model. They can follow the playbook. Oh, this is how I'm supposed to treat this person based on how they treat themselves. Yeah. That is super important.
No, absolutely. I was thinking about, I know I shared this with you guys before, but I was thinking about, again, like, how I was before and how I am now that I don't want to say master, because I think we all kind of have to work on it and out. Right. But I'm definitely much better than I was before. the boundaries, because I think, you know, I used to get so attached to people, like so quickly attached to people. And because of that attachment, in my mind, I know I met you yesterday, but in my mind, we've known each other forever. This is my sister. This is my everything. And I would get so attached. And with that attachment came an expectation of I should have all access to them. I should know everything. They should be willing to tell me everything. And like, there was no boundary ever in my mind, because why? Like, I would tell you everything. I would be transparent. I would do all these things. I would share all my lunch with you. I would do these things. Yeah, all my lunch, every piece of it, all of it. So I'll do that. Like, and in my mind, there was an expectation of, okay, that same level will be reciprocated regardless of whatever. And I had to learn in some very hard fashions that that's not the case. Like, that is not the case. And from there, I think after a while, you start to get hurt, because there is this expectation, and it may be a false expectation, but it's an expectation that you have set in your mind nonetheless. So when that doesn't happen, and when it constantly doesn't happen, you now have to kind of figure out, okay, what is going on? Because you can either get bitter about it, right? I'm just so hurt. All these people don't like me, and you can be bitter about it, or you can try to move forward and figure out what's going on. Do some self-reflection. So in my self-reflection, through, of course, therapy and Jesus, I had to see that, okay, there are some people in life, number one, that may just not like me, and that's okay. That was the first thing. That was the biggest thing. But two, when it comes to certain people too, you have to understand that, okay, everything is not going to be reciprocated the same way. And you have to learn. I love that you use the contract, because this is the season I'm in, y'all. Let me tell y'all the season I'm in. Whatever terms and conditions you want to give me, whatever terms and conditions you draft up for the contract, I'm not drafting up contracts no more, because I know how I am. I'm a very loving person. I'm a very, oh, come on, everybody, let's have friendship. And, you know, so whatever terms and conditions you draft up in this contract, that's what I'm willing to accept at this point. You know, like, if whatever you feel like you need, that's it. But make sure you also keep in mind, right, that if there's something in the contract, that a clause that states I can be here for you, but you can't be here for me, that's a problem.
Terminated.
Got to work that verbiage out. You know, like, if we really looked at stuff like that, like, I'm going to accept the terms and conditions of this contract. I want you to understand that. And if that means you only want calls on the holidays, no problem. Like, no problem. That may be where you're at. If you're somebody that may want calls every day, I'll see if I can do that. And if I can't, let's discuss that. But really accepting the terms and conditions of boundaries, and not just ours that we're presenting, but what others give us too. And from there, okay, I got you. So I think that really helped me as far as attachment, because I think when we have that attachment problem, whether it's because of how we grew up, whether it's because we lack a relationship with fathers or mothers, or we had toxic relationship with parents or siblings, even sometimes some siblings can be ruthless. So if you have those, sometimes it can be really hard, because now you're looking for something to fill that. You want the sister, you want the brother, you want the mom. So you're looking for that, and you attach yourself in a way that's not real sometimes, because they're not your mom. Like, they're not your mom, they're not your dad. And not saying that they won't show you love, but it may not be exactly what you want, because we begin to fantasize things when we don't get them. So now that we fantasize this image of a person in this relationship of a person, we now want this. And when they can't do that because they didn't even know there was a picture to begin with, we're so brokenhearted. So you have to accept the terms and let things build as they come. But those boundaries are the contract. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much I wanted to piggyback on what both of you said. I think since Dominique's the last one that spoke, I think there's an important thing to remember, is that failed expectations are what causes a lot of relationships to break anyway.
Yes.
I can't hold you accountable to an expectation I did not communicate. Right. And so I get upset. Like, what do you mean you didn't fulfill this thing? And it's like, when did you tell me? And it's like, oh, you're right. My bad.
Right.
And like, that's another part of boundaries. Like boundaries have to be communicated. You can't have the assumption that other people can read your brain and say like, okay, this is the boundary that she had put up and now I have to follow suit because it's her boundary. It's like communicate it. So therefore we're not carrying resentment and bitterness towards people that didn't even know. Right. And then Steph had said paper thin type boundaries. Now let me tell y'all, my boundaries were so flexible. You can make a paper airplane out of them things. I would set them up.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah.
Let you say the right thing or give me the right emotion or
that's good.
provoke a right thought. And I'm like, all right, you safe. And the scripture about guarding your heart above all else. I had to learn that I'm over here getting hurt by people that should have never had access to me.
That's
and
right.
I keep beating myself up like, Jermaine, like how many times do you have to be misused or abused for you to be like, all right, no, seriously, like we need to do better with boundaries. And it took me a long time. And it took me a long time because I didn't realize what I needed people to fulfill in me. I had to look at myself and be like, Jermaine, there's a void there, and you trying to put any and everybody in there. It reminds me of those little boxes that you give kids where there's a peg for a circle, peg for a square, and I'm gonna try to shove people to the wrong things.
Get
like,
right there.
Right, like that's not their position, that's not their spot.
That's good.
And so I'm over here just like resenting people and be like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna be alone forever because like people suck. And it's like, well, Jermaine, if you're attracting the wrong people, because the toxic thing in me is appealing to the toxic thing in them, that's why this is not working. I have to remember that. And I remember I was watching Jackie Hill Perry talk about I don't know who said it, but there's an author that said even Jesus had boundaries. There was the 3 M's that he used to...
Hold on, wait a minute. Here she go. Let me get my
in the comments.
Hold on. She got the 3 M's.
She got the 3 again. The last one demolished us. So come on. It's in the comments. Quick.
Hold on, wait a minute. I'm ready for you today. Let's go. I'm ready.
So there are people that Jesus had meals with. Jesus had meals with just about anybody. Everyone was welcome to the table because he's like, I'm not here to save the well. I'm here for the sick. So that means I'm going to have meals with everybody. And then there's ministry. He had 12. He shared his ministry. He was like, I'm going to prepare y'all for the ministry because I have to leave at some point and I need y'all to be ready. But then there was the misery. And he only had 3 disciples that were allowed to see Jesus at his most vulnerable moments. And it's because everybody couldn't see Jesus as that suffering lamb that he knew that he needed people to see, but only 3 people can really handle that type of weight, and it really gets you thinking about it's okay to have friends, it's okay to have associates, it's okay to have people in your family even, but not everybody gets to see you at all of your stages. And that's what boundaries are. And so if Jesus is the example of how to set up healthy boundaries and who you can let in and how far they can go. It was like, okay, when I heard that, I'm like, all right, Jermaine, who are your meal people? Everyone's your meal people. Who are your ministry people? Because ministry is something sensitive.
Yeah.
But it's also something that like God obviously wants us to share. But then who can see you in your most miserable moments, but still see you as the strong, beautiful, talented, creative person? And those are the boundaries and understandings of self and other people that we need.
That is so good.
That's amazing.
That was so good.
Good. And it really makes you think. This is the goal of the podcast, to make you think about things that we might have heard, not in that way, but okay, you hear the certain themes. This is the time for introspection. We're always like, you. Boundaries are about what's happening in here. Why am I not setting these things up? And am I revealing too much to the meal people, right? We're using the same phrases, that those who can handle my misery, my humanity, not my flesh. I'm not talking about being fleshly. I mean, can you handle me, my humanity? It's okay if you can't. You're a meal person. Boundaries, and even, okay, as therapists, right? we have to put boundaries up with our clients. I mean, the first thing that they told us, well, I know for Jermaine and I, because we went to the same program, they said, don't sleep with the clients. That was one of the main things they said. Don't sleep with the clients.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? But when you get into the intimacy of therapy and you're opening up emotions and feelings, and there's tears and there's laughter, and there's those deep portals being poured out, oh, it's a very intimate space. Oh, it's a very intimate space. So the fact that you have to have that boundary up, and if someone's asking too many questions, I've had clients ask me very personal questions. I'm like, oh no, we're not discussing that here. You know what I mean? And having to remind them, this isn't a friendship. And I know it seems like, oh my gosh, I'm just so open and vulnerable with you. But no, we have to keep the boundary up. Why? Because we're going to go too far, or we're going to reveal something to someone who was only supposed to be eating a meal with us and not dealing with us in ministry or in our misery. That is profound. It is deep. And I really hope that we're all catching the revelation of that.
Yeah.
And also we say too, my business has been spread out all around everywhere. Are we telling people, have we not put the proper boundaries, especially with family? We're talking about friends, but especially with family. We think because someone has the same DNA as us that we can drop every boundary known to man. No, ma'am, no, sir. We need to build our boundaries up so that we're not used and abused by the ones who share our same biological makeup, that we have to be cautious and careful. That it's like, I know that you came from the same parent as me, or we share the same grandparent, or you're my mother's sister or my father's brother, but I have to have a boundary with you because I'm protecting what's in here. Man, like that was just like, it hits you like, it makes you reevaluate. Where do I need to make sure that my boundaries are in place, either firmer? And then once we finish this, I do want to talk about what it looks like to reduce some boundaries that are too firm, because boundaries can be
right
as well.
Right, absolutely. No, I can give us a segue right into that, because what I was thinking, number one, the meals ministry. I'm already trying to figure out. Let me recategorize some of these people. Let me put them over here.
Huh?
I'm over here moving people like this.
Hey, right now.
Over here. For real. No, I think that's so important. I think we have done a bad job at allowing people to kind of categorize, right? Because we always, don't put me in a box and all these things. I'm outside the box. But it is okay to have, like, I think about how I am, right? So naturally, as I am, I have a place for everything. Like, everything needs a place. I need a place for my movies. I need a place for my clothes. I need a place for the things I put on my face, and I need a separate place for the things that I use to make sure I brush my teeth and stuff. Like, I have a place for every single thing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I can utilize this and utilize the fact that even Jesus, as perfect as he is, also in his perfectness, I don't even know if that's a word, perfectness, has these boundaries, these types of boundaries. And being able to categorize people, and this goes back to what I was saying, accepting the terms and conditions of the contracts that people give you, right? There are some people, and it's not based on word, but the Bible says, men by the fruit that they bear. And I think the issue a lot of the time, and why we put up a complete wall sometimes, is because we get into these relationships and we get into these friendships, we take these jobs, right? We take these jobs. There's no real acknowledgement of Christ in any of this, right? Because we just make the decision, hoping for the best, right? Yeah. So that's number one. And number two, we don't give it enough time for us to really see the fruit that someone is bearing. Because when you see the fruit that someone's bearing, that's because you've given time for us to see how the tree is producing. Right now, we're just looking at, it looks shiny, it looks healthy, it looks a certain way. But when you start to have some time with the person, some time with the company, some time at a church, like when you get some time in, you'll start to see and identify, like, oh, hold on, wait a minute. What they said about Jesus again? Oh, no, I got to go. I got to get out this church, or, y'all told me that y'all was, here go this person. Y'all told me that this was a remote job. Oh, y'all changed the position again and again and again. Bye. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work for me, right? You have to give it time. So be yourself, right? But allow people to show up too. Don't force anything, like May said, don't force anything into a place, right? Allow the time to show you what the fruit is. Is it bad fruit? Is it good fruit? Because a good tree is not going to produce bad fruit. And a bad tree is not going to produce good fruit, right? So if it's something rooted in here that's not of good intent, that's not of righteousness, right? If it's something rooted inside that person, it's going to come out in that fruit. So let that fruit show up. So when you can say, oh, I opened this and there was a worm in my apple, you good to go. Like, give it that time. Give people that moment. Give people the chance. That's how we don't put up that immediate wall, right? Give people that chance to be themselves. But as time goes on, they show who they are. They show their true colors. And when they do, to put up.
Yeah. Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, what I feel. Believe them. You gotta believe them when they show you. And, you know, like Steph was saying about when we have boundaries for a long period of time, and it's like, when do you know when to move them or to kind of, you know, start breaking them down? I believe we all have seasons, right? And in one season, something is absolutely necessary for safety, for survival, for whatever it is. But that doesn't mean it is applicable for the next few seasons that come after that. I think sometimes we don't realize we put up boundaries because of traumas we face, because of pain that we've experienced. And it's like, okay, but once I heal from that thing, what did I do with that boundary? Did I keep it? Because I have a lot of clients who have suffered a lot of things, and they're like, this is my boundary still. But then on the other side of it, they're like, I just wish I had some people that were close to me that I can rely on. And it's like, well, sissy poo, like, when did we move these boundaries to bring people in? Because if we didn't move them, we're not creating access again. And I think we have to really, in the introspective work that Steph was talking about, is really like, am I ready to let people in? And am I ready to come out? I always have a turtle on me somewhere, because I'm like, that's my spirit animal, for real, for real. Like, its safety is on its back. And you will never catch a turtle who feels unsafe that's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna just pop out. He's like, I'll peek my head out and I'll scan. But if I don't feel safe, I'm going right back in that bad boy, and no one can get me, and I'm not coming out. And I feel like I do that as a defense mechanism, not necessarily a healthy boundary, right? But I feel like we have to always evaluate, like, where are my boundaries and who are they with? And are they conducive for the season that I'm in now? I can't say, like, Lord, send me this, and Lord, I need this bestie, and I need this man, and I need this. And he's like, well, then step outside of the house, ma'am. Like, step outside.
Yeah.
Open a window at least. Open the door. Like, you can't expect people to always, like, do the extra work or go the extra mile to see you. It's like, you have to show them, like, I'm ready and willing and available. And that's just not in, you know, romantic friendships. That's even platonic. That's even familial. Like, my father's side, I don't have a relationship with most of them. But at some point, it's like, am I willing to open the door, or is that a permanent boundary? And I have to consistently evaluate, like, when do I decide? And for me, it's when I feel like I'm safe and I'm emotionally intelligent enough and emotionally regulated enough to open that door. Because if I don't, I'm gonna blow up on somebody, and then it's gonna create a wall and a boundary and some other stuff. So just be mindful, do the work, and understand that not everything that was conducive in one season is conducive here.
Absolutely.
On point, on point. And I think it's so good that we have to evaluate that. You know, I realize that so much of our life it has to be run like a business, that we have to do a 6-month review, a 3-month review, a 2-month review on our boundaries, like, just like you're at a job, that you are speaking to your supervisor, the department head, the manager, you're doing a review, you're seeing what works, what doesn't work. We have to do the same with our boundaries. And because boundaries can be conflated or confused with defense mechanisms. And defense mechanisms hurt us. Now, they are even needed for a season. What's the purpose of a defense mechanism? You're putting up something because you don't want to be hurt. you let someone in and then they didn't work out. Friendship, like you said, platonic, friendship, familial, all that. It didn't work out. You put the boundary up, then it turned into a defense mechanism. I think a boundary is just that one step down from the defense mechanism where I don't need this to trigger. It triggers automatically. It's like the ADT security system. You step one foot in my house and you cross that line, cops to come in, you're getting arrested, you're getting thrown on the lawn. But sometimes we don't need all that. We could be extra. So I really appreciate that transparency where it's like, this was a defense mechanism. And I'm in the same boat. I don't really talk to my father's side of the family, and I just seen them recently, or I just interacted with them recently. And I'm like, for me, I don't have a desire to have a relationship. I don't have any animosity. There's no hatred. I have a free and clear and open heart. But it's a reevaluation. Maybe in another season, maybe at the beginning of the new year, maybe I'll reevaluate that. But if I just keep this boundary up, or if you're watching, you're like, oh, I just have this boundary up and it's set for life, like it's a lifetime boundary. There's no evaluation of it. There's no like, oh, maybe I can dial this down a little bit. And speaking about romantic and relationship wise, you know what I mean? We have to make sure that we're not pushing and rejecting people out. Like our boundaries. I don't mean being loose and stuff like that. I mean that emotionally, are we open? And Jermaine, you said something so beautiful that we're saying people come in, but are we ready to come out? Because the boundary and the door can be open, but if we're still in the back, like, oh, I don't want to come out, we're waiting for the Amazon man to come and swoop us off our feet. You know what I mean? I just had asked on a live, like, man, why can't my husband be delivered to me like an Amazon package? It's just not like, we got to step out in our own comfort zone and recognize, why wouldn't I step out? Two guys I recently interacted with, I let them know about my boundaries sexually, emotionally, physically, all that, right? And shut up. And they were like, oh, I recognize you have boundaries. They're like, I don't have any boundaries. I said, that's a problem for me. Why don't you have any boundaries? I know what you want to happen. Like, I get it. You're letting me know you're clear and open for everything. You should have boundaries. And what I said to one was, you need to let me prove that I'm worthy of your love, that you've dropped everything and your heart is so open and wide. And we've known each other 2 days and you're already trying to pay a Lobolo and you're trying to bring goats to my dad. Like, be mad. Yeah. You need a boundary. And I'm like, let me be a model. Let me show that you need a boundary because you're way too open. That's how we get destroyed. That's how we get hurt. We're opening the door, but are we ready to come out? Are we healed enough? Because in our healing season, are we doing the work so that when that boundary is open, that we're ready to step out, no matter how the other person is going to be? Because if I interact, Jermaine, you interact with your father's side of the family, what if they didn't do the work? But you've done enough work for you. You have to do enough work for you and them that you say, no matter how you act, I know I've done the work. You cannot trigger me. You cannot bring me back. That's what a real boundary is, right? We're talking about that creation, that process. Why do I need the boundary? You have to assess. Let's get into that. How are we helping people know when to set up a boundary and how to create a boundary? I think a lot of people want to create boundaries. They have a desire in their heart to do so, not the courage and not the will to do so. So what will that process look like for someone who wants to create a boundary? What were those steps? How do we help navigate someone who just has the desire, but just not the willpower or the strength or just the know-it-all to say, oh, I can do this?
Yeah. I think when it comes to anything, you have to understand your why.
Yeah.
Because your why is what, in spite of what happens and in spite of what is communicated, you're like, yeah, but I remembered why I'm doing this thing. Like people who, at the beginning of the year, they're like, I'm going to lose 15 pounds and I'm going to go on this diet. It's like, okay, but why? Well, because like I want to lose weight. But then when those meals come and those little cheat days come, that why goes whoop, and then they never catch her back and like reel that in, And I think understanding why you want a boundary and what it's for, right? And then you have to distinguish like, how much access am I granting other people? Because in some seasons, I was telling my friend this, I was like, in some seasons you do have to be more isolated because there's things you have to work on within yourself, and those boundaries have to be strong, because some people don't care about boundaries. They're like, I don't care what you say, I have a need and you're the one that's going to fill it and I need you to fill it. And it's like, no. And people are very like, where we're all sorry.
Oh
We're
no, hold
all
on. I'm like, we're getting this out. So I don't technology.
Right. We was like, hold up.
With technology, we're putting a boundary up on you. You need to act right and appropriate. We're getting this out. Okay.
amen. Yeah, people don't respect it, but it's like I need this boundary for a specific reason, for a specific purpose, and if I continue to remember it, I have to know that there's levels to these things. I can't just put a strong hard boundary my first time going in. It's like that's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can just start with like maybe having less communication with that person, that's a place to start, and then maybe I can pull back a little bit more, and eventually you start to develop the gift or the muscle to do it. As an athlete, I can't just say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go out here and do this. It's like, no, you got to strengthen those muscles, which means I got to practice them. I got to do the exercises that strengthens that specific muscle, so that when I try to utilize that muscle, it's like, okay, it's strong enough because I put practice into this. And so whether it's practicing how to pull away, whether it's practicing how to say no, because no is a firm sentence,
Mm.
um, or if it's I need to, work on myself, it's knowing there's levels to these things and you have to practice it, and it's going to get hard. You're going to want to move it. I told y'all I moved them bad boys like it was nothing. Like they were lightweight. But at some point you're like, I have to love myself enough, I have to respect myself enough, or maybe even respect them enough that I won't let you tarnish what I have. I won't let you tamper this good thing that I got. So you might have to just be at a distance. I can still see you. We can still communicate, but your access is limited.
Yeah. I think that is we have two. So we have, how do we establish boundaries with maybe newer people in our
Mm-hmm.
lives that come in, right? Because that is like the me work, that's the self-love work,
Yeah.
really establishing that. And then you have these people that, okay, I've gotten to a place where I've had horrible boundaries when it comes to the current, relationships and friendships I'm in now. How do I go about that? So my main thing is, because I'm still on Mills Ministry Misery, I'm still on that. I'm still on that.
Profound.
And how I feel is like this. If you define the terms of each of these in your life, right? I think, again, you'll be able to categorize or even have a rubric, in a sense, of how you will react or act with those people. So in Mills, I look at Mills as like, this is what the Lord told me to do. He told me to love people. He told me to respect people. He told me, I can be kind to people. Like, these are the things that I'm required to do by God. So everybody has access to my love and respect, in the sense of, I don't mind. There's no one that I would never not pray for, right? Or like those things that are kind of outside of me and have everything to do with Christ. So yeah, I'm gonna pray for that person, and yeah, I'm gonna do all those things with that person. But then you have this ministry thing, right? So then you have to like define each of these. So ministry, what does that look like? Misery, what does that look like? And when you do, I think once you define those terms, then you can kind of, okay, this person is here, and this is how we're going to act with them. This is how we're going to react. And then it also leaves room for people to grow into places, into different in different categories, right? This person can right now be in Mills because you just got to know them. But as time goes on, you start to see, man, this is someone that really shows up for me. This is someone that I've had some rough days with. This is someone that we had a disagreement and we were able to come back together and we were good. Like, time goes on, and then you start to say, hey, I know we met at Mills, but maybe I can trust you in the ministry department, and you start to grow into that again. And then people will show you, and then those people that came off as ministry people, but now they really, I saw that you really have evil intent when it comes to me. You're really envious of me. So because of that, I'm gonna put you back over here with the Mills, and that's okay too. I think instead of us moving the boundaries, move the people. Move the people.
Come on, move the people.
They need to go. Don't move the standard. The standard is amazing. Your standard is your standard. Move the people. That's okay. Move the people. We're made to move. We're made to be mobile. So move the people. Move the people over. So I think defining those terms, setting up kind of like, again, it's business, and I think we all business women here. So in my mind, I'm just thinking like how I look at like sponsorship packages, or like if you had like if you had a membership
absolutely
somewhere, right? So I'm thinking like, how I'd be looking at like, okay, if you go to the gym, you might have the basic membership. So you could go to the gym, you could touch all the equipment. All of this is here for you. Everything the light touches, Simba, is for you. Okay.
Come on, King.
However, then you start seeing these people and they go to the classes and you're like, how they going? They got yoga class and they got, fit RPX and they got the cycling. And I'm like, how they get over there, and they were willing to pay a little bit more to get into that. And then you got the people that got that, and now they got a sauna and a pool. And I'm sitting here like, well, I just got the access to the basic equipment, right? That's how I want people to look at and value access to me. That's how I need you to look at it. Because if I know that I bring to the table a good friend, a good support, a great confidant, a praying friendship. Like if I know I bring those to the table, I need you to see and value, man, this is a good friend. Man, this is a good employee. Man, this is a good partner. I need you to see that so that when you see a boundary, you can either accept that boundary and keep it there, or you can say, hey, what can I do to even, maybe I want to get closer to this person. What can I do? How can maybe I want to start talking to them a little bit more. See if they're open to that. Like there's ways to get closer to a person as well. It leaves that room when you understand that, okay, my standard is set. I don't have to move the standard, but I can definitely rearrange some people in my life and that be okay too. So I think identifying and really making it clear what these things look like. What does meals look like? What does ministry look like? Really making that clear and having those terms for you and the people, so that they understand, okay, all right, this is where I'm at. And if they want to be somewhere else, they're going to pay. They're going to pay. They're gonna say, you know what, it's a little sacrifice that I might have to make to support my friend down the street. Because if you can't support me down the street, don't look to, when I start going all the way to Belize and Africa, don't look for the handout now. Don't look for it.
Don't look for it.
You couldn't even go with me down the street.
I love that concept, and I love that visualization that we're not moving the boundary, that if someone wants to go to a higher tier,
come on,
closeness, right? You want to go from level 1, you want to go here 2, 3, you want to go to these tiers, that you're willing to look at the terms and conditions and see, can I do this? I can. Let me go up to this tier. And I think it takes a lot of the pressure off of us. You know what I mean? Because the boundaries are reinforced no matter what. We have put the steel behind them. We have made sure that they're secure. We keep checking if they're hollow, because hollow boundaries are something else, right? There's nothing in there. We're making sure they're full. We're making sure that no one can push them. And we ourselves are not pushing them from the other side. We don't have to worry about someone pushing them down. We've already identified we're the ones who push the boundaries down. But if we say that the standard is my boundary is going to be here, and then you get to choose where you want to be within that boundary, all the pressure is off of us. Now I don't have to worry about, oh, you're going to do this. I laid out the contract clear. You clicked on the button that you said, I agreed to these terms and conditions, and you press submit. And when you did that, that was a legally binding contract that you said, okay, yes, absolutely, no problem. It is what it is. I love that. I love how that visualizes in my mind. And I know that for those who are watching now or later, or whatever, I know that visual, it's very helpful, because some people don't want to put up boundaries because you feel like you just don't have the strength or the courage to do it. And it's just like, if I put it up, I can't uphold it. Put it up no matter what, and let people choose where they're going to be. And then, as Jamae, you were saying, Dr. Maya Angelou, when people show you, believe them. If they're showing you, I'm not going to respect your boundary down the street, right? When you get to Belize, Africa, Cuba, wherever, where you get to all these different places, they're not going to respect you there either. we are not delusional anymore. We're
Mm.
allowing people's real things and characteristics and all who they are to be seen. We're not glossing them over. And I think that's key. I think that's the key to making a good boundary. A boundary is like a recipe that you're
Mhm.
putting different ingredients in. And if one thing, you know, if you don't have the salt to match out that baking soda, that baking powder, then your food is inedible and that boundary is gonna fall. And so if you want a good boundary, you're putting in your bowl the why. I love that. Why am I having this boundary? And I'm leaving space for flexibility, not for weakness, but do I need to adjust this? Do I need to evaluate this? Sure. Do I
Yes.
need to put something else in here? Do I need to make sure that I'm upholding this boundary and making sure that you can move wherever you are? I'm not forcing you to honor my boundary. You're doing it because you want to be around me and I want to be around you. I'm just like, oh shoot, that's good. I don't have to move. I don't have to move my boundary anywhere. The people move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move. The people move.
Gems all over. You know, we are getting towards the end of our episode, believe it or
We
not.
are.
And laughing
I
and
can
all
talk
that.
to y'all all day.
We could go for 10 hours. We could have a Let This Mind marathon. Okay. Just going. But these topics are real life, and we see so many things happening because there's just a lack of boundaries or too firm. And you want to be with someone, or you want to do this, you want to do that, but the boundaries are too firm. There has to be a nice balance, an equilibrium where we're allowing our boundaries to flourish, but they're not the defense mechanism. They're not the steel door that keeps things that we want out. You know what I mean? So let's do a wrap up. You know what I mean? What are we saying to people who are hearing about boundaries? What encouragement are we giving them? Word, whatever. What are we talking to people about as we wrap up?
So I think the main thing that I would want to make sure that it's penciled in, and then covered with pen and then covered with permanent marker is the fact that you define these standards, right? And these boundaries and whatever it is that you're saying the expectation should be. And when you make them, because I think it's very easy to make these boundaries, right? But then sometimes we don't realize how much we put into them, that it makes it almost impossible for people to even come in, right?
Yeah.
So find the balance, find the balance. Instead of asking like, what do I want from people in this, right? Ask yourself, what am I willing to give with different people in different levels?
That's good.
Don't ask like, what am I willing to give? That's how a business does it, right? They look at their expenses and they say, okay, based on this, if this person gives me $20 and this costs $10, we can give them this, but they can't get the other one because it's more of an expense versus an asset. You know, we're not getting anything from this. So we want this to be a reciprocal thing. So when you make the terms, you know, when you make these terms and these expectations that you have for people, make sure they're expectations you have for yourself as well. Make sure that you're asking, what am I willing to give at this level? What am I willing to give? Am I willing to give conversations when they're going through at this level? Am I willing to give, you know, a holiday call, birthday Facebook post at this level? Like, what am I willing to give at this level? And then from there, I think you'll start defining that, and then you can kind of have it. I just didn't want it to be where we're making boundaries and then we make these things so complex in recipe that no one can do it but Chef Gordon Ramsay himself. So we need to have our little 30-minute meals too, and that's okay.
Come on, Rachel Ray.
Make sure that they're not so complex where no one can get in, and you can't even meet these expectations yourself. So make sure that, you know, we're looking at what am I willing to give and what can I give in these levels. So that's my point for right now. Outside of the bills, ministry, and misery that I'm gonna keep forever in my life.
God is good. Hallelujah. I guess I would go back to the love part and reminding yourself that it's too expensive. When you think about what you want boundaries for, your heart, it's too expensive. Your walk with Christ, it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Your soul, it's too expensive. And it's so expensive that Jesus decided to die for such soul, for such mind, for such body. So if he said, my life, I'm willing to give it because it's that expensive. We have to remember everyone cannot have the access that they desire to those things because it's too expensive. When we talked about the misery part, what Jesus was going through was heavy, and not everyone can carry the weight, right? And just remembering that, and remembering it's too expensive to not have a boundary. It's too expensive for everyone to have access to it. And like Dominique was saying, it's like move people as you need to. I took that. I took that. Move people as you need to. Maintain the standard, because you won't catch, a 5-star restaurant just taking anybody. They even have a dress code at a 5-star.
Come
right?
on.
McDonald's, you go as you are. It don't matter how raggedy you look, but you will not hop into a 5-star restaurant and be like, I need a table. They're like,
Not
you
here.
don't even meet the
No,
standard.
you don't need no table here.
You don't even meet the
Down the street, there's a
standard.
7-Eleven.
Right.
Quick pick.
Like, you don't even meet the standard to walk through the door, yet alone sit at the table.
Ooh.
And I feel like we have to say that to ourselves.
Yeah.
If you don't meet the standard, not only are you not walking through the door, you're not having a seat at my table. So remember, it's too expensive. Remember, you're worth the boundary, and keep it and maintain it until the season changes.
Listen, very good. We're talking about don't make the boundary too complex, and recognize the value that the boundary is protecting, right? So I was reading this quote. I'm going to read it and then do my wrap up, right? It says, boundaries taught them God's holiness. The moral boundaries taught them God's righteousness. The social civil boundaries taught them the value of all in the nation, right? So if we're talking about boundaries, so important are boundaries that at the beginning of our time, not the beginning of the Most High's time, not the beginning of God's time, that he created boundaries. He separated the water and the land. He created the light and the darkness. So important are boundaries that our creator said, I need to put these in place, and I need to place laws in place, and I need to set social boundaries and moral boundaries so that you do not go over the cliff, so that you do not enter into a space you don't need to go, right? So boundaries are a form of love, and that we're not offended, or you can be offended by boundaries, but see the perspective shift. That if someone puts a boundary up and that you're putting a boundary up, it is an act of love. You want to salvage a relationship. You want to make sure that someone's okay. Without that boundary, without that guardrail, you're driving on the road and you're going on the cliff and there's no metal guardrail to catch you. We're going over. And this vessel that is so important and so expensive, as Jermaine was saying, it's going to go over and crash. So boundaries are for protection. It's to make sure that we're okay. And have the courage. That's what I'll say. Have the courage to formulate a boundary, right? To strengthen it, to make sure it's not paper thin. And then have the courage to dial that thing down, assess it. Maybe you need to do a 6-month assessment, a 3-month assessment, to make sure that you're not blocking your blessings and the things that are supposed to help you, your destiny helpers. You're not kicking them out and pushing people away that are meant to add and contribute to your life. Okay. Look, there's so much more we could say, but I think this was a great overview of boundaries. And I feel like, man, this was awesome to talk about it. And it's uncomfortable sometimes to put boundaries and to maintain boundaries, but it's okay for us to deal with a little bit of uncomfortability for a lifetime of healing, right? We're uncomfortable. It's setting that boundary up, but we know in the long run, it's going to be something so good. So we thank you for joining us. We want to see all your comments and all that. You know what I mean? We'll be back not this next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after with some more heat for you, because we're talking about we're letting our mind be whole, well, healed, okay, and we're having our boundaries, okay.